do a quick audio check. Should sound better today. Using a mic proper mic this time instead of something built in. And I'm on my Linux machine this time. So, let's get things kicked off. Maybe a bit too quiet on the audio, according to Alexi. So we're going to turn this up a bit. Alright, I've upped the gain. Alright, give me another quick sound check, Alexi. Let me know how I sound. Alright, he says it sounds better now. So that'll be our mic levels today. Look at foundation. Oh, I see. that's why I did a manual import instead. Okay. Import of foundation is redundant. Alright. Alright. So the general process I have for working on web apps in Haskell is I use Yesod for one, and I generally start my apps out being based on Yesod scaffold. Excuse me. But I don't really use Yesod devel for kind of the hot loop development. Instead, what I do is I use the devel main helper module, and there's this somewhat innocuously named action called update, but the documentation tells the story. It starts or restarts the server, so all you have to do is load app/devel main, which will take a hot second on this computer because it's only got 2 cores and they're not very fast cores. It's wrong anyway. Alright, I made it mad. There we go. Alright, and then I can do update, and then it's running at localhost 3000. I can then go to localhost 3000, and it's clearly working fine. Alright, so the reason I did that is because if routes is a normal Haskell module, modifying this means that my GCI will reload everything I'm doing correctly. And hello everyone. People are starting to roll into chat. Thank you for joining us. Working on a web app. What I'm doing is I'm taking the raw kind of routes text file here, which I can now remove, and I've replaced it with just a Haskell module called routes. It does require I factor some stuff out of the foundation module, excuse me, which normally defines the app type. So I split routes into a routes module, the data app type into an app type module. Excuse me, that's this guy. And this app type is, it's just like a config type, basically. This app type is very representative of what you get with most Yesod scaffolds. It's got an app settings, which is essentially a Haskell data type storing that kind of information. Like, you know, database config and things like that. And then static is just settings for serving static files, database connection pool. Manager is actually the HTTP client connection manager. So it's basically a connection pool. The logger, and then this is something I added. Postmark is these guys. I'll show you. Yeah, these people. This is Postmark. I fixed up a client library for talking to Postmark in Haskell, and I was planning to use that for customer communications. Okie doke. Well, I actually got the routing thing done faster than I expected, so I guess I'll move on to the next thing. And the next thing is, I got a couple things here. Let's see what routes we already have. So incidentally, this is, if you're wondering what this web application is, um, it's this. It's this guy. Right now, as far as the public website is concerned, it's basically just a very simple CMS, and then this just links out to the Haskell book website, which is 100% static. This isn't static though. This is actually Yesod app. So it's just got the product page for the almanac, and then a blog post from myself, and then a blog post from me and a colleague of mine. But under the hood, I'm basically building like an e-commerce site underneath. Kind of like what O'Reilly.com used to be until they got rid of their e-commerce site and moved everything to Safari. So, thanks, O'Reilly. I'll just take your customers who want to just buy a book and not pay you rent forever. All right. So yeah, Alexi noted that figuring out Yesod imports something he struggles with. That actually, there's. I think I can actually explain this, at least partly. So basically, there's a couple layers. Okay. So if I run tree, okay, running tree on there was not super helpful, but there's actually another refactor I can do that helps explain it. So I'm going to start moving my source code under a source directory because it's a fair bit cleaner. I don't like having all of my source files like at the top level like this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to move down to library here. Source dir is going to change from dot to source, and then you'll notice that there's only basically 4 exposed modules for the library. Model is exposed for migrations. Import and no foundation are just different layers of imports. I'll explain those in a moment. And then application is the top level application. So one way you could think about it is the end of the imports, like the most terminal module that consumes the most stuff, is the application module. So that's basically the end. The beginning, you could say, the thing that gets consumed the most or imported the most, by other things indirectly or directly, is going to be import no foundation. So let me start moving stuff under. Well, let me start by just moving .hs under source, and then model source, handler source, helpers source, import source. Settings is actually got some Haskell source code in there. And then, what am I going to do about templates? I'll ignore it for now and see if it breaks. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so bebopping in here. So import and import no foundation are just 2 different layers of kind of automatic imports. It's a way of making it so that you don't have a lot of imports at the top of every single module. This is again part of the Yesod scaffold. This is part of the reason I recommend people use the Yesod scaffold so much. I learned a lot of tips and tricks and some nice patterns for writing Haskell applications just by using the Yesod scaffold. It helped a lot. A lot. It's really important. So I don't think it normally comes with control.lens. Possibly I added that. I could be wrong. But yeah, it basically has a bunch of stuff that, yeah, I definitely added postmark and markdown and things like that. So it's just all the stuff you kind of want to be in scope by default. And one of the advantages of doing import.no foundation is that if there's some stuff that you don't really want to conflict with the rest of your other stuff, and you know you're going to need to hide things every time you import it, you might as well just write the import and all the hiding parts once, and then just make it part of your no foundation. And then for anything else, you can just do a qualified import. on the occasion that you actually need to use it. So for example, in this case, I've just got the UUID type constructor in scope by default. Now, no foundation means that no foundation means that foundation can consume it, and it means that anything that foundation consumes can consume it, because you can't have an import cycle, not without starting to do hsboot files, and let me tell you, you don't want to do that. So you can think of the no foundation module as kind of the start or the top of the module hierarchy. I don't think I'm going to try generating a dot file that represents it, but you know, whatever. All right, so then the next layer is foundation. I just got done changing this a little bit, but normally foundation contains your app type and your routes. And it's called foundation because it's essentially the base layer describing the application. The app type is, like I said, it's just the config thing, that thing. And then the routes are where the Yesod type safety starts coming in. Basically, it generates these data constructors that all inhabit a data type describing all possible routes in the application. And it lets you do type safe URL generation. It also ensures, for example, that if I have home R, a route named home R, then I need to have a handler defined for that. If I don't have a handler defined for that API endpoint, that route, then that's a type error, not a runtime error. And basically the route stuff is just a bit of code gen to spit that out real quick. And then the rest of foundation is spawns and ends. I could probably and should probably get rid of this. It's the menu item menu type stuff is, if I recall correctly, it's a hangover from the scaffold. I do use this type synonym though. It is pretty handy. Otherwise you find yourself writing M form yada 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 a bunch, and that just feels dumb. HTML only is related to the content discrimination that Yesod provides. So the way Yesod does content discrimination is basically, instead of having, so if you're not taking advantage of content discrimination, at least not the normal way, your handler would be handler HTML if it returns HTML, or if it's a JSON endpoint, it would be handler value, and then it just knows how to handle that. However, if you support HTML and JSON or something like that, then you do handler type content, and then what you essentially do is you provide a representation for two different branches. There's a particular way of writing those endpoints. I'm not gonna go into it today, but you can probably find an example if you want to. And then the Yesod instance for your app type is just some kind of, it's just standard web app stuff. App root isn't too interesting. It's basically just ascertaining the base of the URL for the app. That's not interesting. Session backend is exactly what it sounds like. In this case, I'm using, client sessions. Client sessions are encrypted cookies in the browser, and Yesod middleware is just the default middleware. So the middleware here is just like WI middleware. They're just functions you compose. So if you want to combine two pieces of middleware, then you just compose them together with the dot operator. In this case, we're just using the default Yesod middleware composed with the session middleware. And default layout, I want to actually move the templates out of the templates directory, now that I think of it. So I should take a hot second to see the situation there. But basically the templates, they're what they sound like. They're just these Hamlet files, but I'd actually prefer them to be in quasi-quoters for the same reason as the routes module. So I might do that. We'll see. These error handlers aren't terribly interesting. They're just rendering an error, pretty much. Standard Excuse me, I don't know why I'm so tired today. Maybe I didn't have enough coffee. Standard set of content stuff. This just decides if it should log or not. It's just log level stuff. Nothing interesting there. This is where RunDB comes from in Yesod app. This pattern of just writing like a standard RunDB helper for your app monad is an extremely good idea, and I highly recommend it. Persist runner, you know, I've never really paid a lot of attention to that. I get the idea that it's just a way to get the query runner from the connection pool, but it's weird. For message I've never used that I know of. Has HTTP manager, it's just the HTTP client. It's a little like helper type class for that. Unsafe handler is used for I want to say it's used for testing more than anything else. Anyway, so then at a layer below foundation is where you get your actual handlers. So handlers are going to be things like this auth stuff. So you have get login r, post login r, things like that. All of this stuff, you see how it has import. You're going to see that in most of your handlers. And then if you actually look at import, usually all it is no foundation plus foundation plus a couple other odds and ends that can't be imported without foundation. So next layer from foundations, your handlers, your helpers, kind of the core, the meat of your application. Then you at last arrive at the application layer, and that's what imports all of your handlers, the things that satisfy your routes, and this is basically where the type check happens for did you implement that handler. And then also an application is make foundation, which instantiates all of your resources and creates your app value. So that's where you set up your client connection pool for HTTP client. It's where you set up your logger. It's where you set up your postmark settings. I don't need all this explained to me. I know what this is. Thank you. I commented this out because I didn't really want automatic migrations running, but by default the scaffold just automatically runs a migration whenever you run make foundation, which is a little spooky. So I gotta thank you, Alexi. He said the imports explanation was helpful. Would I consider submitting my Yesod directory structure as a stack template? I've thought about it, but it's not actually. I mean, it's a small difference. So basically, my ideal stack template, which really I should make because I end up making all these modifications over and over every time I work on a Yesod app, it would be a lot like the Yesod Postgres stack template, which you can create right now by just doing stack new project name Yesod Postgres. It's going to be similar to that. It's always based on that. And then I would move stuff under source. I would move routes into a module from config. I would move the app type out to its own app type module. I would rip out some of the little like example stuff that they throw in there because they have some kind of throwaway code to try to show you how stuff works. I would throw that out. However, the overall structure would be pretty much the same. This hierarchy of import no foundation, foundation, import / handlers, and then application, that's still the default Yesod scaffold. So maybe someday, I don't know. I've been kind of hoping or waiting for Stack to support getting stack templates from third-party resources so that I could just host the stack template as a Git repository instead of needing to upload it into stack templates. However, that hasn't happened in the last year and a half, 2 years. The issue's been up, so I may just PR the template. We'll see. All right. So make application isn't too interesting. It takes an app, creates a WI application out of it. Make a logware, still not interesting. So, and app main is what actually gets run when you create a binary that's intended to run your application in production. Okie dokie. So I already got routes moved out. Let's see what the template situation is. And see how it works. Because it may not. So Alexi asked a good question. The question was, if you want to spawn a thread and have it run some task in the background every once in a while, the right place for that would be @main. And then in @main you'd put for kayo action and so on. Yeah. I don't know where else you'd put it. That's pretty much where you'd have to put it, yeah. I mean, it's tricky because that is where I tend to put helper stuff, but I don't know if that's actually the right place. It's usually something I would put like right there, right before I actually run the app. One thing you have to keep in mind is that if you're using Yesod devel, it's not going to run that stuff necessarily because it's using devel main helper and get application dev. And then get application dev is here. So one problem is duplication. What app main does is not unique to app main because if you look, get application dev is doing basically the same thing, right? It's just returning the settings in application instead of just running them directly, so that the devel main helper can handle how to run them. So if they're meant to be run in production only, then app main's okay. If it's meant to run, like always run with the application, then I would probably consider putting it in make foundation or make application, depending on the circumstances. I'd have to think about that. Let me see here. Yeah, so often this is stuff I would put in app main, but you have to think about it. And then as far as for.io goes, for.io has kind of a particular semantics that you need to think about because what you probably want is something more like async or slave thread. So the thing about fork.io is that if I have fork.io some action here, if some action fails, then if any exceptions occur here, they just kind of die off in their own thread. It doesn't kill the entire app main thread or anything. Or anything. So you have to be careful because you're basically going to want to write a standard kind of side task application lifecycle thing for wrapping this stuff. And it would probably be something that takes app as an argument. So it would probably have the type of like app to IO unit or something like that, to IO unit, something along those lines. And it would need to understand, it would probably want to use async, it would probably want to understand how to restart things, when to restart them, if it should at all. There's an argument to be made for just letting exceptions bubble all the way up into the main application thread and then just letting it kill the app and get restarted by whatever your init system is. In my case, that's usually going to be systemd, but sometimes it's whatever the Ubuntu one is. I can't remember. Hold on. Is this anything in here going to remind me what it's called? Nope. It's, hold on. Ubuntu, it starts with a U, I think. No, not systemd. Upstart. Yeah, Upstart was the one before systemd. Anyway, so yeah, usually your init system's going to be systemd or Upstart or something like that, and then just let that handle it. Because one of the issues I have with like automatic task restart and things like that is that usually what I want is for the app to actually just die and restart from scratch, and I want to be able to trawl through the logs and understand exactly what happened before I decide on an actual remediation. Or put differently, I want the remediation to wipe out all possible shared state in the application before it starts again. I don't really want to just automatically assume everything's hunky-dory. Okay, so let's see if our templates directory here works. And let's also see what's in templates. A fair bit. Well, it seems to work fine, so I guess that works. Cool. All right. That's another problem solved. Okay, so I've got a couple different things I need to do on here. One is I need to get ebooks working with products. Right now, products are pretty dumb and don't do anything. We have users, we have passwords, which are bcrypt hashes. We've got password reset tokens. We have addresses, which are currently unique to a user. I've got products. Okay, so there's title, there's price, and that's about it at the moment. Now, hypothetically, this is actually fine for the purposes of a physical product. It doesn't really have to be that much more involved because I'm just going to turn this into an order with shipwire. Anyway, these people. However, some products might have some kind of electronic content associated with them, and the purchase of a product should give them access to that ebook. Just like how with Gumroad, if you buy the Haskell book, plug, if you buy the Haskell book, right now you're buying it from Gumroad, right? This project is essentially to get us off of Gumroad, and when you buy it from Gumroad, it just remembers that your email address owns the book and that you have access to download it again in case you need to re-download it or if we release a new version or whatever. Okay, so that's one thing I need to work on. I also need to work on shopping carts because I don't really do anything with that right now. I also need to configure my local database here because at the moment I don't think I'm really doing anything with that. So let's see what happens when I run the migration. I don't think it's going to work, but you know, worth a shot. Yeah, alright, I need to set it up. Do I have Postgres running? Whoops. Helps if you put crap. Okay. Looks okay. Whoops. Okay. Well, Cars of Comrades is on there. Let me think about this. Can never remember this syntax. There we go. Lordy. Alright. I've been using MySQL at work and it's broken my brain. Alright, so we've got that. I set a default password in the config for the database here. Let's try changing that and see how it behaves. While that loads, let's remind myself how to change the user's password in Postgres. There we go. Thanks, Stack Overflow. Luckily, this isn't a machine exposed to the interweb. Okay, we're loading app/migration again. Any minute now, bud. There we go. It's still mad. Well, let's try my own medicine here. Oh, you know what? Database name is boutique dev. Let's create that database name. okay, but for realsies. There we go. And check that I have access to it. Yeah. Okay. No, it's actually the password authentication. Postgres, localhost. Feel free to chime up in chat if you know what I'm doing wrong. Actually, connect Postgres. Oh, that's not super helpful now, is it? Yeah, it's just a template. Okay. Maybe I need to restart it. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but it's worth a shot. Okay. So run. It's using run migrations, which is from source model HS. Run migrations. Oh, that's why. Because I had a redundant dev connection string in here. That's probably why that was failing. Where does devcon get used? In run-dev-db, yeah. And then if we look back at migration, run-dev-db is used there. So, dang, gotta watch that duplication. I think I've cleaned that up before and gotten it to use the settings. I think it was just a little bit annoying is all. I should change it to do that. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, here we go. Boutique. Bada boom. Good to go. And alright, so now that that's taken care of. Alright, so I've got a couple different things I can work on. I've got I could work on the shopping cart. Oh, is that not comment character? I could work on the shopping cart. I could work on product catalog page, or I could work on attaching ebooks to products. I am going to briefly stop the stream. Let's take a break, 5-minute break, and let me know in chat or on Twitter which one you'd like me to do next. See you in a bit.